So I had a pretty interesting no-duh realization about civilization, countries, and human development yesterday or the day before. And, we'll go back to the story of Cain and Abel, right? Right after the split, people split into people oriented with the material versus kind of being oriented with the material. This split between farmer and hunter-gatherer, right? But also this split between spiritual and materialistic, like both exist in this surface world, right? But you can be looking at what creates the surface. To somebody who's spiritual, the air is creating the surface of the water. What's coming from above creates the surface of the water and controls the surface of the water. And to somebody who's materialistic, you view the surface of the water as being generated and controlled by what is coming from below, right? The water is making the waves. The water is making the pattern. And both of these things are kind of fundamentally correct, and they have completely opposing chains of causality. One going up into the imaginary in the air, and one going down into the matter. Right? And so this way of looking at things, people kind of like split into. It's one of the main fragmentations of human psychology. Like if it's going to fragment, it fragments along these lines. And so what you get is just like you see people who are oriented one way or another, right? And it's not necessarily good or bad. I'm not saying spiritual in terms of like good or bad, because spiritual means like all the dark spirituality, the bad people, like bad people. There's very powerful bad spiritual people, just like there's very like materialistic bad wealthy people, and there's very good people of either sort as well. Right, but there's this split, and so it'll split along families, it'll split along countries, it'll split along people, and it splits. So you have these main splits where even within a family, you might have people who are more or less spiritual. Because of this previous split, that whole family line is going to be more spiritual oriented. Right, so just in comparison to previous forks in this tree, you'll see groups that'll tend towards being one thing or another as a collective. And so you'll get countries that are inherently like materialistic, or countries that are inherently like spiritual. So you get in this splits within the populace, the priest class and the king class, and what people are drawn towards doing. You'll see these are the different splits in society. With like a material, like at a spiritual level, it would be, controlling the weather to control the surface of the water. And then materially, it would be able to move giant clumps of water around and rearrange it, to move the water itself. And the spiritual thing is that water moves into wherever there is space for it, right? So you create these vacuums, and it pulls the water into it. So a wave comes up. Right, that's how the weather impacts. That's how waves are made. Right, the air pressure is going up and down, vibrating like that, and then that's what creates waves. Just like a kid jumping in a bathtub, right? So when a CME hits, or like when space weather hits, there's pressure fronts from the sun. And when the earth runs into those, it hits it like kind of a ball, and then the atmosphere starts reverberating kind of like that, and then that reverberation makes reverberations on the surface of the water. like a kid in a pool jumping up and down with like a ring float on, sort of. And that's where waves come from. There's like the current theories is like, oh, the wind blows over the surface and that generates the waves, and it's like it's not how it works at all. But that process is analogous to above, like everything's kind of like symbolic. So in any specific instance of anything, right, like the weather, the wave system of the earth, you can look at, and that's symbolic for how reality is changed from the top down by the spiritual. In the causal or the kinetic chain, you can't really measure it or see it or contain it. It's this larger, the causal chain is this larger picture view that you can like only see with your imagination, based on completely inexperienceable data points. Like you're looking through a telescope, you're like looking through an instrument at a thing unimaginably far away. Like it's so far away you can't imagine it. That's what all spirituality looks like. It looks like the assumptions about astrology. Like, think about how astronomy or astrology is talking about, oh, here's planets and black holes and here's this whole system and all that. And you go, well, what is this based on? And they go, oh, look right here. Like, it's based off of this like circle right here. Put your eye up to it. And that's what different religions are based on. They go, put your eye up to this part of your body. Look really deep into this part of the body and you'll see this landscape, you'll see this thing. And you'll go, what? Is that connected to here? And they're like, yeah, completely. It's like what drives the weather. And so it's the same pattern everywhere. It's fractal. It's fractal. So in my description of the solar system, in my description of anything, I can't help but just keep repeating my description of everything else. Slight changes and permutations throughout the whole thing, but in reality, the whole thing is actually more similar to itself than any of our ideas connecting any of it together are to it. Right? Think of the fractal and then think of the line that you have to draw to get to one part of the fractal to the other part of the fractal, and that line is the most peculiar thing there. Everything else is part of the fractal, but like your imagination putting and chaining everything together is usually like linear, right? You can fractally connect things, and that's a beautiful thought or a profound work or whatever, is when it like fits into that location. It rhymes with its space and its time and its location. So you can't fractally connect things. But for the most part, the speculation about how things are, because how things are is exactly how they are, any sort of deviation you have from that is doesn't actually fit the picture. It doesn't fit the puzzle. But yeah, that's the primary split between people, is that the world is a surface, right? And that surface is just like any other surface. It's dictated from below and it's dictated from above. And that surface is resting on two systems that are absurdly vast and extremely deep. And so you can trace the causal events of how did this event get here? How did this wave get here? And you can go into the water and you can go, it went from here to here to here to here to here. It started here. But at some point you have to make this leap to a higher dimension and go, no, it actually started there. It started at the sun. What's the sun? It's this warm thing up there you can't touch, but we can like look at this computer screen and look into this lens, and then we have some ideas. And we think those things over there are the same thing. There's 4 pixels here on this camera. Right? It's just very far away. Everyone goes, "Oh, well, what's this information you know in your heart?" And you go, "Oh, it's just a feeling." Right? It's just 4 or 5 pixels of data there's a language coming out of it. Like everyone's doing the same thing. The way is never lost. It's there is only the way. Because the brothers never split, right? There is no spiritual stance, there is no material stance. It's But people do get fixated on one side or the other, right? People get fixated on one side or the other, and then that's transmissible. That focus is transmissible. So like if you're fixated on one side or another, then your kids and the people around you or whatever, they will fixate on that side as well. And which side you're fixated on doesn't change what the surface is actually doing. Right, so even everyone's mostly focused on trying to change what the surface is doing, how life is going, how reality is going. And then there's an assumption of like which side are you going to focus on to accomplish this, and that is usually chosen very early before conscious memory or conscious choice. So that's why these forks happen. Deep forks, and then you can have, pseudo forks. So I think America is a spiritual country, right? It's founded on ideas. It's primarily concerned with knowledge or information. And then it uses that information to generate just weapons of great power. Huge bombs, giant psychological control operations based off of its spiritual knowledge, its knowledge of information. It's a spiritual country that has almost all information, it has almost all the information on Earth. Although not really, it seems to be sort of a play or a facade or a front. So it seems to be a performance by people who do have all the information on Earth. But anyway, like Russia, I think, is primarily a spiritual country. They're just concerned with suffering, right? They're there just to endure. existence. Communist countries are materialistic, right? Trying to solve everyone's crisis with material. Like, hey, let's get the material spread out and then the world will be better. Right? Where in Russia, they go, how do we solve something? They go, here, this will help you endure your suffering. Here is some vodka. How does America help you solve your problem? Here is some information about it. Here's what your problem is. That should give you the power to control it. And so those are spiritual countries, and then the communist ones are sort of material countries. A country that is based off of nationality or race is a materialistic country. A country with a king and virtuous religion or priest or whatever is that's a country like looking at all of reality, a balanced country. Where the leader emerges from the land, like the land created the people created the leader, and so there's this chain of leadership going all the way back to the land, and so that's when you have a king or or whatever, a conqueror, someone who conquered the land, and then everyone exists within that family or that fork, that nationality. Something from the ground up. When you are an immigrant or whatever, you go somewhere and you move into a culture. You don't move onto a land. And you have to wipe out all the culture in an area to reset the land for you to own it. So anytime land truly changes acquisition, there seems to be a rather large genocide of some sort, because you do have to remove the culture, otherwise you're an immigrant into that culture. That's the only way to own land.